It's hard to believe that it's been a full year since Mafia 3 launched. October 7th, 2016, 1 year ago today, we finally got our hands on Mafia 3. And we all took that trip to 1968 during the time of the Cold War, civil rights, Vietnam War, counterculture, as our protagonist, Lincoln Clay, Vietnam War vet, orphan, and, the man who would, set his sights on Sal Marcano, waging a war of revenge across the city of New Bordeaux. And leading up to the launch, there was a lot of hype, a great deal of anticipation, because this was the third game in the Mafia franchise, which raised the bar extremely high because the first two Mafia games, Mafia: The City of Lost Heaven, which I'm currently Let's Playing right now, set in the 1930s during the Prohibition era, as well as Mafia II during the 1940s and early 1950s, were two fantastic games. Excellent story as well as great characters, along with really good gameplay. So the bar was extremely high for Mafia 3 going into launch October 7th, 2016. And we're going to talk about the difference between what we got on launch day and where the game is now 1 year later, because there's been a lot of additions, a lot of changes to Mafia 3 since launch October 2016. And yes, I did Let's Play the entire game of Mafia 3 from start to finish, along with the expansions. In case you're curious and you want to go check out those playlists, feel free and do so. All right, so launch. I was extremely overjoyed, elated to finally get to play this game that I've been covering for just over a year. And I had been following the game and posting videos regarding Mafia 3 since the reveal trailer a year prior, August 2015. And it wasn't until spring of 2016 that the marketing campaign really kicked off for Mafia 3, and I tried to cover just about anything that came out regarding news and trailers, postcards, fake newspapers, brochures, you name it. I was covering it on the channel because I was extremely excited for Mafia 3 because I was a huge fan of the first two Mafia games. And so we finally got Mafia 3 1 year ago today. It loaded up on my Xbox One. I got everything set up, my Blue Yeti microphone, my Elgato, and I started recording. And there were problems. Yes, there were. So launch day, obviously, we had serious bugs, glitches, crashes, freezes, all sorts of issues to varying degrees. Some people actually didn't really have any relative issue, but a lot of us did. Whether it was on the Xbox One or the PlayStation 4, there were problems. But to Hangar 13's credit, they did resolve most of those issues. Most of the bugs, glitches, freezes, crashes that we experienced the first few days, weeks, even month into Mafia 3 were ultimately resolved by the development team of Hangar 13, with a few exceptions. So the game definitely runs a lot better 1 year ago today than it did back on launch October 7th, 2016. Now the problem is the fact that I feel like Hangar 13, which was a freshman development house with some experienced veteran developers under the rooftop, including the people at 2K Czech, which are now part of Hangar 13. This was their very first game that they built together as Hangar 13. And the fact that it was the third game in the Mafia franchise, like I mentioned, it set the bar extremely high. And there was probably a lot of pressure from the publisher, Take-Two, to get this game out by October 7th, 2016. Because that was during the holiday season. They wanted to get the sales. And I really do feel like, and I still strongly believe this, that Mafia 3 would have benefited from a delay by a few months. Maybe 3 to 6 months delay to fix the issues that plagued the game on launch before they ultimately got the game out. But that's the past. It's a lesson that hopefully Hangar 13 has learned, and in the next game, whatever their new project is, we don't know yet. Hopefully we'll find out sooner rather than later, but hopefully the next game made by Hangar 13 will have vast improvements at launch than Mafia 3 had in October 7th, 2016, a year ago today. But today, 2017, a year later, Mafia 3 definitely runs and performs way better. Now, the various issues that we just talked about isn't the only thing that's changed regarding Mafia 3 over the past year. A lot of stuff has been added to the game. Some of it courtesy of free updates from Hangar 13. Other things involved the 3 paid expansions. So at launch, we had no changeable outfits, no vehicle customization, no races, and there are abilities that we now have in Mafia 3 that we did not have before, such as slow-mo driving as well as slow-mo shooting. Additional weapons, outfits, and vehicles were added, as well as Sammy's Bar, part of one of the expansions, as well as the ability to remove the useless rear view mirror and speedometer. Even though some of us wishes that was kind of separated, where you could just remove the rear view mirror and keep the speedometer, but unlike Mafia City of Lost Heaven and Mafia 2, you do not have to worry about speeding in Mafia 3. You won't get pulled over by the New Bordeaux Police Department if you're speeding, unlike Mafia 2 and Lost Heaven. And some people don't like that, but believe me, going back and Let's Playing Mafia the City of Lost Heaven, in my opinion, one of the biggest antagonists of that game is the cops. Because big cops will fine you for speeding. Cops driving by will get you for speeding. It really is a pain in the ass when you're trying to play a video game. But back on topic. So yes, a lot of stuff ultimately got added to Mafia 3 to really flesh the game out, including the 3 awesome expansions. Each one fantastic in its own right. Faster Baby, which covered some civil rights issues regarding a small town in this neighboring parish. And Stones Unturned had a very Cold War, Vietnam War vibe to it. And then Sign of the Times, probably the best of the 3 expansions, dealt with the issue of cults, also a problem in the 1960s. And you could say cults are still a problem today. Now, along with all the things that I mentioned that have changed regarding Mafia 3 since launch, October 7th, 2016, there are things that have stayed true in the game from day one to today, 1 year later. First off, we're going to go over the good things, the things that I think are pros, if you will, regarding Mafia 3, from launch to right now and going forward. The pros begin with the protagonist himself, Lincoln Clay. He is awesome, a badass, and somebody that you do not want to mess with. He's smart. He has military experience from 4 years serving in Vietnam. He is very loyal to his family, to anyone he considers to be friends, and those that cross him, beware the wrath of Lincoln Clay. And the entire story is revenge, because of the fact that his adopted father and brother brutally murdered, left for dead, and he comes back and declares this all-out war against the main antagonist, Sal Marcano, leader of the Sal Marcano crime family that basically runs New Bordeaux. And it's a great story as well. The story is phenomenal. It's definitely up there with Mafia City of Lost Heaven as well as Mafia 2 when it comes to the story. The same thing can go for the ensemble cast of characters. Lincoln Clay, along with supporting characters like Donovan as well as Father James, and the return of Vito Scaletta from Mafia 2. It's wonderful to have him in Mafia 3 because he really ties the Mafia verse together. And then his lieutenants, each one with a different personality, like Thomas Burke, Cassandra, and then their underlings as well, and the various villains that you encounter, along with the main boss, Sal Marcano, his son Georgie, which at one time was one of Lincoln Clay's best friends. And then you have the rest of the Marcano crime family. The one downside is we don't really get as much time with the various villains because there's just so many of them. But overall, most of the characters that you come across in Mafia 3, big or small, are very memorable. Even the characters in the 3 expansions. Now, a big plus, in my opinion, regarding the gameplay of Mafia 3 when you're going into missions and side quests was Hangar 13's philosophy going into the development of Mafia 3. No failure, but death, which meant you could tackle these missions, taking down rackets, districts, how you wish to do so. You weren't forced to be stealthy. You weren't forced to go in guns blazing. You had numerous options to get the job done. And that's one thing I really enjoyed about this game, because I'm not exactly the best at being stealthy, even though sometimes I like being stealthy. I like the fact that you can mix it up, that you can sometimes go in 100% stealth or go in 100% guns blazing, or you can do a little bit of both. And the only thing that matters is that you accomplish the mission, that you take over the racket, that you take over the district. And that's something that I have to applaud Hangar 13 with. The fact that they gave players a certain amount of freedom when it came to how they chose to play the game, because everybody plays a video game different. No one plays the same game exactly the same way unless you're forced to. And I like the fact that Hangar 13 had that philosophy of no failure but death. Next, of course, is the music. Wow, the music is exceptional, because the 60s, 70s had some great music. And there's definitely an awesome lineup of tunes for Mafia 3, which, fits into the late 60s narrative, along with the setting, during the civil rights period, counterculture, the Vietnam War, the Cold War going on, along with, so many other elements. It just really breathes life into the game, including the city itself, New Bordeaux, which I loved just as much as Empire Bay from Mafia 2, as well as Lost Heaven from Mafia, the City of Lost Heaven. Now, New Bordeaux is based on the real city of New Orleans, and each district is very unique in its own way. Like the French Ward is based off the French Quarter. It's the party area. It's where you go to drink, listen to jazz music, blues, have a good time. There's the downtown area, as well as residential areas, such as up in Frisco Fields. That's where the rich of New Bordeaux live. You also have the slums of Delray Hollow, where most of the African-American population reside in New Bordeaux, as well as River Row. That's where Vito Scaletta is, along with fellow rebel Italians. Along with one of my favorite areas, the middle-class district known as South Downs, then Point Verdun, that's predominantly Irish. And then Tickfall Harbor, along with Barclay Mills. That's where a lot of the, importing and a lot of manufacturing reside, is within those two districts. And then, of course, down in the bayou, that's just like a wild place to go, with the alligators, as well as a lot of crazy stuff going on down in the bayou. It's very different than New Bordeaux, and that's a big reason why I like the bayou. And as I mentioned a moment ago, a really big plus, in my opinion, was the return of Vito Scaletta, because he was such a loved protagonist from Mafia 2. And that's what really excited me the most about Mafia 3. That's what got me on board from day one. The reveal trailer, it was very interesting. I was like there. I'm like, yeah, I'm feeling this. I'm feeling this new guy. I'm feeling the music. I love the muscle cars. I like the fact that it looks like it's going to be set, in New Orleans. Because I always thought that New Orleans would be a good city for a video game. And then one of the characters revealed, obviously an older version of Vito Scaletta. Even though he looked a little bit different in the reveal trailer, he had more of a Silver Fox vibe to him, which I prefer. But I was just excited that we were going to see the return of Vito Scaletta, because a lot of us were wondering what the hell happened to Vito Scaletta following the conclusion of Mafia 2. By the way, I also Let's Played Mafia 2. The next pro, I would say, are the sit-downs. So after you take over districts, you sit down with your underbosses, Vito, Burke, Cassandra. You have to decide who to give this district to, and it can be difficult, because maybe you want to balance it out. Maybe you want to try and keep all three underbosses happy, but you can also piss off one or two of your underbosses, and they may ultimately turn on you if you don't give them a certain amount of districts. So you have to, another problem you're going to have to deal with besides trying to take down the Sal Marcano crime family. So there's a balancing act there, and the fact that each one of your underbosses at every sit down is going to offer you something for this district. And, that may factor into why you give Vito this district, or Cassandra that district, or Burke that district over there. And, it's just a lot of thinking through, like, okay, do I want this item, or do I want to keep the underbosses happy? It's definitely something you have to consider, and it adds a lot of replayability to Mafia 3. So you can go in and even Steven it, keep all 3 underbosses, you know, on your side, and then maybe the next playthrough you decide, you know what, screw it. I'm just going to give all the districts to Vito or Burke or Cassandra and just piss the hell off the other 2 underbosses and see how those 2 scenarios play out. Then, of course, the ability to go into the rackets, take them over through various means. As I mentioned a moment ago, no failure but death. You could go in silent but deadly, or you could go in, you know, guns blazing, and you could take down most of the districts how you saw fit. Now, you have to first take back Delray Hollow, then River Row, then Point Verdun. But after you take back those 3 districts, then the rest of the districts, you can just pick and choose which one you want to do one at a time, and you can take the rackets out first and then take down the districts. So I definitely like that option to be able to play it the way you wish. Do you want to go after Frisco Fields first, or you want to go after South Downs? Or do you want to hit downtown or the French ward? It's entirely up to you, and that's one thing I like about this game, the freedom that you have, not only during missions, but also the ability to simply just drive around, do side quests. That's definitely a pro. Collect Playboys, other things as well. And it's just a lot of fun, getting into trouble with the cops or looking for, other NPCs to take down that are hiding in various corners of districts you've already taken control of, as well as Sal Marcano retaliations that happen sporadically throughout the game. I just love the fact that there is a lot of stuff going on in New Bordeaux, down at the Bayou as well, that you can get involved in. What I also really enjoyed was the fact that we had a variety of different types of weapons for gunfighting as well as melee combat. Well, melee, it was very simple. You either just beat the crap out of them and did like a death kill with your fists or with a knife. But we did get a nice variety of weapons, gun-wise, for Mafia 3. Pistols, revolvers, shotguns, and assault rifles, snipers, machine guns to choose from. And I do like that variety. And it was a lot of fun to pick and choose what arsenal you had to take into battle, because unlike games like Grand Theft Auto Online, where you had like a whole armory on you, you had to pick and choose. You could only have like a pistol and then either a rifle or a shotgun or a sniper rifle or a machine gun. You had a very limited amount of weapons that you could physically carry on you, along with Molotovs, grenades, etc. So yeah, that's one thing I definitely liked, the fact, because it forced you to play a certain way. If you wanted to go in as a sniper, you could have a sniper rifle, but you couldn't have a machine gun as well. But you could also pick up someone else's machine gun and then drop your weapon for another weapon. So you always had that option when it came to the recently deceased thugs and mobsters that you had just murdered on the mean streets of New Bordeaux. But the melee combat was fun too. The ability just to sneak up to somebody, do a stealth kill with Lincoln Clay's Army Combat Knife, or just to start beating the crap out of them and just do this brutal takedown. That was fantastic as well. The Underboss Perks, I kind of alluded to those a moment ago regarding the sit-downs, but yeah, each Underboss had a variety of different perks you could upgrade and get better variety of. Like, for example, like Vito had the ability for you to call in reinforcements if you were in a tight spot and you had like a whole bunch of NPCs and you just felt like you needed some help, or at least some bullet sponges, because that's usually what I used the reinforcements for, was like cannon fodder. You could call in reinforcements. You could get your consigliere to not only come pick up money off you and put it back in your safe, but she would also go, once you upgraded her, and she would collect the take from your underbosses. So you didn't have to drive all the way to Delray Hollow, then River Row, then Point Verdun just to collect your money. She would go take care of that for you, along with Jackie, who was riding around in his orange van, with all the goodies, the weapons, ammo, upgrades, along with health packs, etc. And it was just nice that he would come to you and you didn't have to go to a store in order to get that stuff. It was very, very convenient. Along with, I think I did mention the alligators. I did enjoy the alligators. They were a lot of fun, especially whenever you killed somebody or you just shot them by the water and they fell in the water. And then if there's a gator nearby, boom, lunchtime, baby. Okay, so those are all the things I loved about Mafia 3. at launch and even up to present day, 1 year later. But there's also things in Mafia 3 that I would consider to be cons or negatives, if you will. The driving. All right, so the driving isn't nowhere near as bad as Watch Dogs driving, but it's not the best either. We'll just leave it at that, and especially in races. Yeah, driving is not exactly the best, but at the same time, there are plenty of games out there that have far worse driving mechanics. So, I mean, I would say it's okay driving mechanics. Not the best, not the worst. Next, of course, was despite the fact you had a choice as to which rackets or which districts you got to take down, along with how you took them down, the way they were set up involved a lot of repetitiveness. It felt the same. Like, you took these guys out the exact same way you would take those guys out, 30 minutes later or 2 hours later. So there was a lot of that, a lot of repetitiveness in Mafia 3. But at the same time, unfortunately, that's nothing new when it comes to a lot of video games today. I wish there would have been a bit more variety, but at the same time, it is what it is. But it's definitely something I hope that in a future game we see less repetitiveness and we see different options, different styles, different setups. But I think the way that Hangar 13 set up the rackets and districts, how you had to take them over, was in line with that philosophy. No failure but death. So, I don't know, it's kind of a balancing act, but there definitely is repetitiveness in Mafia 3. Next, let's move on to vehicles. So, there's definitely a lot of awesome rides in the game, and I would say this is kind of a plus when it comes to the vehicles themselves, because, you got cars, trucks, vans, SUVs from the 50s, from the 60s, even some from the 70s in Mafia 3, and a lot of them are beautiful. The problem is you only have a limited amount of vehicles that you can have in your fleet, and they're pre-selected, and they unlock. Fortunately, thanks to the expansions, we got a few more vehicles along the way, but a lot of Mafia fans, including myself, would have preferred the ability to just go and steal vehicles and customize them, fix them, add them to a garage. I really wish we had a garage too. I do like the convenience that you can, call up your car guy and he'll deliver whichever car you happen to have in your fleet that you want. But at the same time, I just wish that we would have had the ability to take the Jeep off the street and customize it, upgrade it, and drive around in that, or in a truck, or in a variety of other vehicles that we could not have as personal vehicles. So yeah, I hope that that's something that changes in the next Mafia game, where they make it to where it doesn't matter what the vehicle is. If you want it, you can have it. Just steal it, go customize it, wham bam, it's in your fleet, it's in your garage. I would have preferred that over the system that they currently have in place. But at the same time, we do get a decent amount of vehicles to choose from. But, a lot of the vehicles that are just driving around, I would have preferred having in that collection as well. The next issue that I still have today, going on a year later, is the save file. And I say save file because there's only one save file. In a day and age where countless video games, new and old, had multiple save files. You could go back to the Super Nintendo Classic, which I just got a week ago, and the games on there like Super Mario World, Donkey Kong Country, etc. Games from the 90s had multiple save files. So you could play this save file, and then you could go start a new save file. And obviously there's games, from the 2000s, like the Grand Theft Auto games, Red Dead Redemption, which I was just playing a few days ago, in anticipation of Red Dead Redemption 2, hopefully coming out in the spring. Yeah, multiple save files, but that is not the case with Mafia 3. And I think this is a major issue that the game had at launch and still has today, because of the fact that there is, the option to do things differently. Like I mentioned a moment ago with the underbosses, you can go in and play even Steven, but in order to go back and, decide to give all the districts to Vito in the next playthrough, or Cassandra or Burke, you have to start completely over, meaning you have to erase your previous save file, which I think sucks, because I wouldn't mind, starting the game over, which meant also starting the expansions over. By the way, you cannot replay the expansions until you completely start the game over, so it kind of resets it. but you have to erase that file. All those hours you put in, creating, this file and the setup that you like balanced between the underbosses is undone. You have to erase it and you got to start completely over in order to do it a different way with, either all the districts going to Vito, all the districts going to Cassandra, or all the districts going to Burke. And I really wish that we also had replay missions, the ability to go back and replay missions that maybe we didn't do as good, or replay the expansions to our heart's content. That would be cool as well. But unfortunately, we don't have the ability to replay missions that we've already beaten, or the expansions, or multiple save files. And yeah, that's something that I still have an issue with 1 year later, because I would have loved to go back and replay the game. But only having one save file kind of makes you antsy about doing that. And finally, the final issue is the one I brought up from the very beginning on launch 2016. Obviously, bugs, issues, crashes, freezes. Not as bad as a year later, but there's still some graphical issues that remain, including the skybox. And wow, skybox does not look so good. And some people may argue, well, they were going with a certain style, a certain look for Mafia 3. But when you look at games with a skybox like Red Dead Redemption, which is several years old, it has a better skybox than Mafia 3. And Mafia 3 is only a year old. So, yeah, it definitely could have used a much better skybox. And some of the minor graphical issues that remain, they are noticeable. But at the same time, it doesn't take away from the overall joy and experience of Mafia 3. I enjoyed the characters, I enjoyed the story, I enjoyed playing Mafia 3. It was fantastic. I also wish that there would have been a form of fast travel in Mafia 3 to, certain degree, maybe from the safe houses. That would have been cool. But another thing that we did not get, and we still don't have in Mafia 3, is a fast travel option, because sometimes it takes a while to get from one side of the map to the other. Overall, I think that Mafia 3 is a much better game today, October 7th, 2017, than it was at launch 1 year ago, October 7th, 2016. A lot of the major bugs, issues, glitches, freezes, crashes that plagued the game at the very beginning have been fixed for the most part by Hangar 13, along with the addition of a lot of content, some of it free, along with the paid expansions, have improved Mafia 3 since launch of last year. Let me know below in the comment section, what do you think about Mafia 3 1 year later? Do you think it's a better game than it was on launch October 7th, 2016? Or do you think it's a worse game? Or do you think it's about the same? And how does it live up with the other two games in the Mafia franchise? Let me know below in the comments section.